Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Sandy Springs, Georgia, it's time for Sandy Springs Business Radio. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here with Rachel Simon, another episode of Sandy Springs Business Radio. And this episode is brought to you by Connect the Dots Digital. When you're ready to leverage LinkedIn to meet your business goals, go to connectthedots.digital. Rachel, welcome.
Hi, Lee. How are you?
I am doing well. I'm so excited about this show. You got a great guest.
Yes, I am super excited as well, especially when I get to invite friends onto the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It's even more fun. So today we're talking with Trey Toler. He is the Senior Business Development Manager at 24/7 Talent, and he also serves in the leadership capacity for Fuse Atlanta, which is a networking group for marketing. We're going to hear all about it. So Trey, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Lee and Rachel. I appreciate it. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we're going to have a fun time. So why don't we start up? Why don't you tell us a little bit about Fuse?
Yeah, of course. That's a great question. So Fuse is a nonprofit, and we're a marketing and advertising organization. And to boil it down, we are here to serve the community. So whether that's giving folks that are in our industry access to colleagues to learn more or learn about what's going on in the ecosystem, what are hot topics, there's that arm of it. And then the other arm of it is we also give back to other nonprofits. Specifically this year, we've partnered with Black Girls Code. We've also partnered with an organization called PoshPack, which is a nonprofit organization that helps young women have access to period supplies in underserved communities. So for every event we do, we try to give back.
That's really awesome to hear. And it's local to Atlanta, correct?
It is local to Atlanta, yes.
Yeah. So, Fuse, the goal is, again, to kind of bring people in the marketing space together. Is it primarily a networking organization, professional development, all of the above? Obviously, there's a component
Rachel,
to it.
Gosh, it's all of those things, right? I think it depends in what you're going into it for. And specifically across the country and in our state, we saw so many people during the pandemic kind of retreat inward. And a lot of that was just where we were at that point in time. Part of the networking and in-person event space fizzled out during that time, and people felt isolated. They felt detached. And with folks working remote, it was really challenging for people to ramp up and learn new skills in the same way they were prior to the pandemic. So to answer your question directly, Fuse is all of those things. You can go there to network is a huge piece, but it's really about building your personal brand. And this is really important, especially right now. And I know this for the work that I do at 24/7. Unfortunately, so many people right now are in flux between opportunities. Maybe they feel underemployed. And just some folks just aren't in a good space in general. So the beautiful part about Fuse and organizations like Fuse is when you network, you go to an event, you meet people, you learn something new, you have an interesting topic, you have a panel discussion, but you're also building that personal brand. And rather than starting from the ground up, for anyone that's been let go or part of a workforce reduction, you already have that built-in community. So you have a leg up to other people in that situation. And I just can't emphasize enough the importance of being part of that community, right? And in whatever way that you can.
Yeah. Well, I love anything that has to do with building your personal brand. So you're talking about kind of doing it in person, and I'm helping people utilize that on LinkedIn.
We're
and kind
two
of
peas in a
tying
pod.
those together. Obviously, networking ties all that in as well. So it sounds like, it's really helping people in that marketing space, whether they're kind of in a role that they're happy with or looking for their next opportunity to really just meet good people. You never know who can open a door for you, right?
And that's a really beautiful way of looking at it. I know the work that you do and what you're passionate about, and that's such a huge piece of it. And when you take the two together, it's that holistic approach. You have your digital identity, you have what people can go on the internet and see at a quick glance. And then you have the other side of that, which is the spaces between, like what can you not capture online, and just streamlining those together. So absolutely.
So now let's get kind of granular about the membership So who is that ideal member for you? Is it a young person that maybe has a marketing degree, got their first job, maybe like you said, got laid off or something happened, and then they're kind of struggling? Or is it the older person that maybe has been involved in marketing for a long time, maybe in a corporate setting, and then they got, kind of laid off, and then now they're kind of struggling? Like, is it for everybody in that window, or do you have a niche?
It's everybody within that window. And there's such a beautiful component to that, right? I mean, speaking about people that are more senior in their career versus people that are greener, I think the organization serves a purpose for both of those people. Depending on where you are in your life, you'll get the same thing in return out of it. From a mentorship perspective, once you reach a certain point in your career, most people want to do something, whether it's on a macro or micro level, to give back. So I think it satisfies that need. But also at the same time, regardless of how long you've been in your career, there's always something evolving, always something new to learn. And I think maintaining that cutting edge is incredibly beneficial for everybody.
So it could be somebody who's a CMO at a Fortune 500 company, could be a member, as well as somebody that just graduated college and is looking for their first job or second job.
Absolutely. We love them all.
Now, is there an education component as well, where you're kind of explaining, or somebody, a subject matter expert, is explaining, hey, this is a trend, or AI, everybody's talking about AI, or this is how you leverage, an LLM. This is how you can use it for marketing. Like, is there education as well, or is it just everybody's it's a mixer and we're all kind of learning about each other?
Ooh, absolutely. No, it is a little bit of both. So the educational piece is really important. And typically for the educational piece, we'll hold a panel or a topic discussion. And you mentioned AI. We did a panel last year and spoke to the different ways AI is impacting our field, right? And it doesn't matter if someone is a creative or if they're on the marketing side. This is a topic that comes up over and over again. So that's the educational piece. And then you mentioned like more of the mixers type thing. We actually have something coming up on June 27th at Bar Taco Chastain. That is just a chill happy hour. We would love to hear what people want to get out of the community. What's missing? What do you like? What do people want to see? So it is a mix of both.
So for something like that, like I love the name of it, Thirsty Thursdays. How do you make sure people feel comfortable coming? Like, let's say somebody's never been to a Fuse event before and they're like, okay, I'm going to go to Thirsty Thursday. I don't know anybody. Like, what do I do? Who am I going to talk to? Because that's, I think, one of the barriers for people to attend these kinds of events is like this fear of how do they start conversation in a room where they don't really know anybody.
Yeah, no, that's a challenge. That's a challenge for a lot of people. And I can definitely spot that. And, my advice for people in that environment is the board that we're working with, my partners in crime, very warm, very welcoming people. And as someone in a leadership role with the organization, I greet everybody with the same level of enthusiasm, whether I'm meeting them for the first time or we go back 25 years. Regardless of where we are in our lives or our career, we can all tap into a place where we felt vulnerable going into a situation where we didn't know anything. We didn't know anybody. So I think about things like that when I meet new people and trying to help them feel comfortable and safe when they're in that environment, because there's so much good that comes out of it, but recognizing that it is pushing some people out of their comfort zone to do things like that. So I think just leading with that empathy and implementing that is really important.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. One time I went to a networking event. I won't name the organization, and there were no name tags. There was no welcome table. I literally walked into this restaurant, took a loop, and was like,
walk right out.
I'm going to go now because it felt so,
right.
It was so unwelcoming. And just knowing that, you're going to spot those people that are looking around like, I don't know anybody here.
Right. It's so important for organizations to understand that from the member stand or potential member that the people need like a Sherpa. They need like somebody that's an ambassador that's going to make maybe that first introduction for them or put them at least in the direction of the right folks that they could benefit from.
Yes. And have those people that you know are going to like start a good conversation. Like, hey, here, this is so-and-so. Like, well,
it's just connecting people. It's like, think about it. If you go to someone's house and, they open the door and they're like, oh my gosh, Rachel, get on in here. Lee, so good to see you. It's been forever, or welcome. We haven't met yet, whatever the case may be. The person walking into the door will automatically feel leaps and bounds more comfortable than if you're like, all right, open the door and just kind of stand there awkwardly.
Are these my people?
Can I touch anything in here? Can I breathe? Like, I don't know. Where's the bathroom?
Right. Exactly.
It's just awkward. So I think it's just helping people feel welcomed and warm. And that's not something that you even have to say with words. It's just an energy that you give off, and giving people that attention, saying, hey, I know you're here. What's up? You're welcome.
Yeah, it really makes a huge difference for sure.
Now, can you share maybe your journey within the organization? Like, how did you hear about it? What kind of attracted you to it? And why did you decide to invest so much time and energy to take a leadership role?
Sure. I joined the organization, actually, my former HR director when I was working at 360i, Amanda Papini, told me about this organization, and she said, I really feel like you need to connect with a few people. And I was like, all right, cool. I'm totally down. I'd love to. So shortly after, I started volunteering with the organization and working on the events. So I focused on the events. Then the pandemic hit, and everything was flipped upside down for quite some time. And in the back of my mind, and I guess the way that I've always been since I was a child, is I like bringing people together, right? I mean, it doesn't really matter how less than ideal a situation can become. I really do believe in my heart there's a lot of power in connection and power in community. And that really just motivated me to want to do more, to want to give back to the community. And I think hearing feedback from people like, you made me feel really welcome, or, hey, I learned something about AI and now I'm not freaking out about it. I can approach this strategically. Just hearing bits and pieces from people in the community is personally inspiring to me. And it makes me want to keep going, but it's also the team of people on the board and within the community that really just propel me forward to want to continue to get deeper.
Now, is there a story you can share, maybe a member story that you met somebody who was able to take their experience within the organization and kind of elevate their career to a new level? You don't have to name their name, but maybe name the challenge that they were going through and how they were able to leverage what they were getting out of the organization to kind of grow their career.
That's a great question. And the first example that comes to mind for me isn't necessarily specific to someone who joined the organization and, kind of worked their way up into the organization. Rather, it's someone who joined the organization, found a community, and then in turn found a job, right? This was heavily last year with a lot of the layoffs going on, and there was an influx of people that were laid off. And I think when you're in that situation, it's really easy to feel like you're the only person going through that. And it's just really stressful. Through the happy hours and through the events that we had last year, there were a lot of people that were like, hey, I know coming to these didn't get me the job, but it opened the door and made it possible for me to have conversations with people who are either A, in the same boat, or B, potential hiring managers. And two of the people that I'm thinking about are gainfully employed now. So I think that's a huge victory.
And that's something that I hear a lot about. So many people think that, okay, I don't have a job. I'm going to go to all these job boards and put in my name 100 times in these things and just sit and wait. And it doesn't happen for them. And they're like, well, I put out 500 things and I got no interviews, or I'm getting ghosted or whatever. And it's much more fruitful, I think, to use your network and relationships to find an in and spend your time that way, rather than just kind of spamming a bunch of companies hoping for an interview.
100%. It's the intentional outreach and the intentional presence of wanting to move forward in a process. Like it's great to show those metrics and the effort of, I've applied to 500 jobs, per day. But at the end of that, I mean, is that the best use of someone's time, right? I mean, that's a volume thing from the recruiting perspective where, recruiters physically cannot get through all of the candidates that are coming in. They just can't. And on the other side of that, to your point, it is incredibly advantageous for people who have that soft end and they're like, hey, Rachel, I know that you work at company X. I know this isn't in your department, but I really feel like I could crush this job, and here's why. Rachel, if you're comfortable with it, can I ask you for an internal referral for this? Boom, easy enough. And most people want to help. Most people genuinely do want to help other people. And I think by, yes, going out on a limb, and it takes courage to do something like that, but it's way more fruitful, like you said, than just applying aimlessly into a black hole.
Especially if it's not working. Like if you
That's
got
right.
to 100, 200, 300, you might want to alter your plan here because it's obviously not paying off.
It's not a good return.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not a good return.
Exactly. And I mean, there's such an opportunity to like, we're leveraging our networks, right? The networks that we have in person, the networks that we have online, and we have to take advantage of those connections that we have. And to your point, something that I have been talking to my college age son about, you know, people want to help people, right? So like, who are the people who are, you know, alumni of your school, who are graduated with your degree? Connect with those people on LinkedIn.
Great advice.
Because at some point, you, even with a question of like, what is the best piece of advice you could give me going into this major? People like first of all, they love talking about themselves, and they genuinely want to help people. Some people don't. There's always those people who are just like, I don't have time for this. But most people are happy to give some guidance, some mentorship. But we just have to identify and then ask those people for help.
That's right. And it's kind of like a situation where when you're in the thick of a situation and something hadn't happened suddenly, such as a job loss, you're in reactive mode, right? Like you're not necessarily able to think with the same clarity as if you're thinking proactively. So again, it just goes back to if we can proactively network, not for the sake, I almost have a weird taste for the word networking. I think people have an idea of what that looks like, kind of like speed dating. And yes, there's some truth to that. But I think at the end of the day, at the core of networking, it's who is the person behind the job title and figuring out what makes someone tick and learning just to have casual conversations with people.
Right. It's a human to human interaction.
That's right.
It isn't like a spreadsheet to spreadsheet interaction, which a lot of people want this to be, that it's scalable, that I can just do this thing and then press a button and 100 things happen. And this is the work that's not scalable. It's that effort and human to human interaction. What do we have in common? How could I help you? How could you help me? Let's learn about each other and see if we can come up with something that's mutually beneficial, rather than, hey, can I do this one action and it'll just do a million more at a press of a button? And that just isn't how you do it, I don't think.
No. And honestly, you know, networking ultimately just, I think, often comes down to reminding people that you exist, because it's really hard to keep up with people. People fall off your radar, and just think about how many times you will run into somebody and you'd be like, my God, I totally forgot about that person. Like I haven't seen them in ages.
And it's not even something negative, right? It's just something that, look, we're all busy and we all kind of get on our own rabbit hole. And then you just kind of grew apart for whatever reason. And now you just got to be mindful and reconnect with as many people as possible.
And just be like, hey, remember me?
Right,
here I am.
Exactly.
And that's so true. I mean, we live in an age, I mean, both personally and professionally, where, and listen, this isn't against anything digital, right? Like I'm a huge fan of it. I think it's wonderful. I think the flexibility and the opportunities that exist because of what we can do online is incredibly fantastic. I think the flip side of that is sometimes people can lean too heavily on that. And with the digital landscape, we have the ability to curate the content, and life isn't curated, right? I think we see things based on how the algorithm is working. And if, to your point, like if someone is in your feed and they bump out for whatever reason, then you forget about them, out of sight, out of mind. But when you see that person in person, you're like, oh my gosh, like I remember, they told me about their kids, or they told me about their son at UGA, or whatever the case may be. And you humanize that. Mm-hmm. And that's just so important.
Right. Because the algorithm doesn't really include kind of these accidental synergies or collisions. It mate for that. It's trying to be efficient. And this kind of random serendipity isn't really part of that. And that's where the humanness comes in. And how do you kind of reintegrate that kind of serendipity into something? And I think that's why it's so important to have organizations like Fuse, where you're creating these opportunities to bump into old friends and to reconnect with a bunch of people. And you're doing the kind of the hard part of organizing this and inviting kind of this wide net of people so they have a reason to all kind of come together.
You said that very well. That was very nice. Very consolidated. I'm very long-winded, so that was impressive.
Not his first interview.
Perfect.
No, it's interesting because even thinking about, you've got more of the casual meetups, which are very beneficial and have their purpose, but then the educational events, then not only are you providing, again, professional development for members, but then it is also a conversation starter for people who attend or maybe couldn't attend, right? So let's say somebody went to the AI panel and they reach out to someone else in the organization. I'm going to say on LinkedIn because that's my world, to say, did you have the chance to go to the Fuse AI panel? What did you think? Right? It's an opportunity to start a conversation where maybe they didn't know how to start that conversation with somebody who potentially might be more senior than them, whatever the case may be. But it's really giving that that little push, here, talk about this.
Right. It's like a cheat code.
Yeah.
Because now you can use the organization in a variety of ways. One, you can invite somebody who you want to connect with and go, hey, this, you were talking about this, or I know this is important to you. Why don't we go to this meeting together? Why don't we learn about this together? Where you can use it as a lever to meet or reconnect with somebody. Or you can find people there that you don't know and say, hey, we were in this thing together. Let's talk about it. Or I have a question, or you ask a great question. I'd like to understand more what you're thinking. So it's a way that you can benefit. There's multiple ways to kind of use it as a way to help you grow your kind of personal brand, like you were saying.
Oh, 100%. And I love that you just stitched the two together with LinkedIn and the in-person stuff, right? Like I'm on LinkedIn all the time for work, and I think it's an incredibly powerful tool. And sometimes I feel like the barrier with LinkedIn is folks aren't exactly sure how to connect with someone else. Like, what do you say in that message? Do you just send it and not say anything, or do you put something? And if you put something, you put the wrong. It's like this thing that we overthink. And in reality, if you bump into someone in real life, like we were just talking about, whether it's at the grocery store or you go to an event, that's just super easy segue. Hey, loved your question at that event. Absolutely loved your perspective, when you spoke on that panel, et cetera, and tying that back. I mean, people like to see those dots connected, and it makes it so much easier just to come up with the topic, something that's genuine, but also real and tangible, to build your LinkedIn network.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, even just saying, great meeting you at insert event here.
Absolutely.
Because the other thing, now we are somewhat limited on how many personalized connection requests we can send if you don't have a premium account. But let's just say we can send as many as we want. People like to know where you came across them, because otherwise we have to spend so much time sleuthing,
researching. I feel like a true crime investigator sometimes. I go on these black holes.
Who is this person? How many people do we have in common? Where do they live? Why would they connect with me? Where would they come across my profile? But just to say, great meeting you at the Fuse event. Love to connect. Boom. Easy. Done. Easy.
You connect the dots. You're like, great. This is how I know you. This is what's going on. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think the two are very much hand in hand. I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. And I think if we use the in-person stuff and the LinkedIn stuff and merge them together, it's like the best of both worlds. I think it's just incredibly powerful. LinkedIn is beautiful at showcasing. Again, it's I hate to say one-dimensional because that's not the word that I'm looking for, but you only see one side of the mirror ball, right? Like online with anything. And it doesn't have to be LinkedIn. It can be any social media. But in person, you realize that we are all dynamic humans. And while you may not agree with someone's marketing strategy, or maybe you don't like the creative they executed on a certain campaign, there are still other things that we have in common. And I think that's the value of in-person networking, where that comes from, right?
Yeah.
Is you it's like we're giving ourselves reminders that it's okay to be, multidimensional human beings.
Now, ideally, we are showing up in person in a similar way, the way we're positioning ourselves online, because then otherwise it gets a little bit weird sometimes.
Right.
Oh, gosh.
It has to be authentic. I mean, you hope in whatever world they're in, they're kind of true to themselves.
Exactly.
Now, Trey, let's talk a little bit about your day job. What's your day job?
Yeah. So I work on the sales side of 24/7, and we're a holistic talent solutions provider. So we're essentially a one-stop shop for embedded teams. We have an in-house design firm, of course, freelance and full-time staffing. And the areas we specialize specifically, it's creative digital advertising. So,
and then is it local to Atlanta and Georgia, or is it candidates can come from wherever?
That's a great question. So we are global. We're a global company. We are across the United States. I'll focus specifically on the US. My team is in Atlanta. We have an awesome team, but it's really a great company across the board. Any person can be a candidate. And that's the beautiful part about 24/7 is we do not have candidate ownership. So let's say, for instance, one of my colleagues in Los Angeles recruited for a design role that's specific to that market. Well, one of my colleagues in Atlanta can recruit the same candidate if they fit the bill for what a client is looking for. So at the end of the day, I think the beautiful part about that, it's not only very efficient, but it's also, we're serving the candidate and we're serving the client. It's not about, marking your territory. We're really in it to make sure that it's a win-win on both the candidate and the client side.
So now who's the ideal client for 24/7?
That's a great question, and I don't have a concise answer for you. I think the ideal client is really anyone who is looking to move the needle forward, and they've had challenges, whether that's due to limited resources internally, cutting headcount, cutting funding for staffing or hiring, but it's also for that small business who can afford a chief marketing officer. So they need someone who's a fractional CMO, or they need a marketing director to come in and help them get over the hump. So that's another thing that gets me excited is there's not like a strong profile in either direction, right? I mean, if it falls in the wheelhouse of creative, digital, and marketing, I mean, we can touch it from, individual 2-person shops to Fortune 100 companies.
And it's full-time as well as like a project?
It is, yeah. So full-time freelance consulting, so project-based deliverables or SOW work. We also have the ability to provide embedded teams, and we have a design firm that we acquired last year, and it's killer. It's a really, really cool shop.
Very cool. That's awesome. So you're basically like any marketing need, you're going to find the right resource for whatever.
Absolutely.
And how do organizations find you? Like, how do they understand that they have this need and they need to find somebody who can help fill it?
247talent.com is our website, and we do have a job board on there. Personally, Trey Toler on LinkedIn, and you just reminded me of something that I wanted to share. And I know in sales in general, like I love working in sales, and I think there's a misconception of the value that a salesperson can bring to any organization, right? And specifically, I'll focus on staffing. It's when you have the right people in place and they serve as an extension of your team, it's just such a wonderful situation. And I can't tell you how many times I've had a client or a prospective client, I'm like, man, I've waited so long to have this meeting with you, and what's going on in your world, and just the amount of work that needs to be done with fewer resources is incredibly overwhelming, and it's present across every organization. I mean, every organization right now, people are talking about how they're like literally giving their kids a bath while they're trying to get off of a Zoom call, and it's just never ending. So I encourage people, and listen, I work for 24/7. Of course, I love the company. It's a great company, but any outside resource, just give people a chance. Like, there are so many good people out there that want to work, and there are so many good people out there that just want to partner and troubleshoot and try to help make your life easier. And I think it just goes back to my passion about networking, is we're so quick to want to close the door on conversations or people before we even give them a chance. And I just think that's really important, especially where we are right now.
Now, at the end of every episode, we ask Rachel for a LinkedIn tip. And since I have you here, I would like both of you to chime in about this tip. Now, from your perspective, what would a candidate who wants to be found, what are some best practices when it comes to LinkedIn, and maybe in your world, what would you like to see more when you're searching for that perfect fit for your clients? Like, what do you want to see from that standpoint? So together, maybe you can share with the listener some really great tips for candidates.
Okay, I'll start. Well, on the LinkedIn side, and again, I don't work as much on the job seeker side, but I'm going to just speak to general best practices, which is having that complete profile with great photos, a headline that is a lot more than just your job title. We want to know what you do. What is the value that you bring to the table? When you just say, I've seen this all the time, project manager. Of what? What company? What exactly do you manage? So we need more information. Having an about section that really is telling your story. Don't just plop the top of your resume in there. Give us a narrative. Write it in the first person. But the other piece, besides just checking all the basic boxes, right, having your experience section well filled out with accomplishments, is the skills. And I'd be curious to know what your thoughts are. And I think the skills section is one of the most undervalued parts of the profile. Nobody's looking at your skills. However, that is what LinkedIn is using to bring you into searches. And so you have to have those right keywords in your skills section. And if you haven't looked at your skills section in a minute, it's time to take a pass and make sure that it is actually relevant to what you currently want to be found for. So that would be my advice.
That is great advice, and it's incredibly accurate. So while I don't sit on the recruiting side, I do want to echo what you just said. And it's really important that your profile, if you are a job seeker, is 100% current on all the things that Rachel spoke about. And the reason why that's important is on the back end for a recruiter, when they're using LinkedIn Recruiter, everything is keyword based. So the more intentional you are with highlighting certain programs, certain projects, certain things that you've done on your portfolio, your profile, you'll get pulled up. So that's incredibly important. I think in terms of what I use LinkedIn for and in general, it's really just leading with authenticity. I think people can write a million articles about, I don't sleep because I'm too busy getting everything done all the time. Grind, hustle. Like, get off of your off-brand TED Talk.
Enough.
And just
be
a real person, right? Talk about real things that matter. Period. I think authenticity is crucial, but also bring value and just show that you're real. And, some people might find that off-putting, but, I think at the end of the day, that's all we have is just show up as who you are. Everybody else is already taken,
Now, Trey, if somebody wants to connect with you, what is the coordinates for Fuse and also 24/7?
Sure. So for 24/7, our website is 247talent.com. For Fuse is fuseatl.org. And to connect with me directly and to have links easily clickable, connect with me on LinkedIn, Trey Toler, and that will link you out to both 24/7 and to Fuse.
Good stuff. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story today. You're doing such important work, and we appreciate you.
Thank you both for having me.
Yeah.
This is awesome. I love the show. I'm so happy for you guys, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful.
All right. This is Lee Cantor for Rachel Simon. We'll see you all next time on Sandy Springs Business Radio.